We're now going to get started with the individual steps related to training program implementation. So in step one, we'll dive into the needs assessment process. The goal of this lesson is to obtain a list of training topics that are required for effective program implementation. Our output should be a final list of topics needed by each business area that will address the training needs for the implementation. Some of the actions we'll take in this step will include a distribution of a needs assessment. We'll want to clarify the needs that are included in those needs assessments. We'll create a training plan, and then we'll get some review and approval from our SMEs that are involved in, are part of those different business areas. So our inputs and tools, our inputs for this step would be our project scope, key stakeholder list, and requirements document. So our inputs are going to be things that we're going to use as part of this step to make things run a little bit more smoothly. We also have tools that we'll use during this step, and that would be the needs assessment template that is provided for you in the template section of this course, as well as the training plan template. So let's start with distribution or distributing the needs assessment. In the pre-work stage, you should have identified key stakeholders, and those key stakeholders are those that stand to benefit from the outcome of the project or product. You will use the key stakeholders list as your target group to complete the needs assessment document. It is important to note that the key stakeholders will typically represent a functional team or a specific audience, a business unit. And so you'll want to group those accordingly and then distribute those needs assessment documents to each of those different business areas or key contacts within those different business units so that you can have a consolidated list and representation from that group. Now, if there's an opportunity where you need to break off and maybe there's, a couple contacts within a business line that need to have input, I would ask that those team members within the group work together to complete the needs assessment document. Begin by creating a custom form for each team or department. So you'll want to put in key information on the template and customize it for that business unit before actually sending it to them so that they're clear about which team it's coming to, and then when they return it, you'll know who it's being returned from or by. Once you start receiving the needs assessment documents back from your key stakeholders, your next step is to schedule a meeting to review the assessment form. So you don't want to just take the information and make assumptions about what their needs are. You want to, again, get a clear understanding of what their needs are. So to do that, I would recommend scheduling a meeting, a clarifying meeting, where you'll gain an in-depth understanding of the training needs and expectations of the requester or business line. Prior to meeting with each team, you'll want to review the assessment document and be sure to conduct your own review. Write down any questions you have and any risks or barriers that surface during your review. This is where your review of the requirements document during the pre-work stage was really important. And it's critical. Use the requirements document to point out any gaps and raise any other areas that you would like your team to or their team to consider. So anything that stood out that doesn't match up maybe with what they put in their needs assessment, or things that you found that might be beneficial or would be a need that they overlooked. These questions and discrepancies can be presented on what the needs assessment is first. You can do that when it's first distributed, so send that document to them along with the questions, or you can hold them back during the time when you actually meet with them. That approach is entirely up to you and what you feel most comfortable doing. I've done it both ways. So again, if you have any outstanding questions that you want to raise, you can do that beforehand, but I usually would like to get that information back and maybe they've already answered it in the document. Okay, so next step would be to create the training plan. The training plan would consist of a list of all the training requirements identified for each target audience and is a working document that will evolve as more details will become available. So there's no assumption that I wouldn't assume that you're going to have all the details that you need after the needs assessment. In most projects, you're going to still have you might consider it scope creep, but it's more like a discovery. So there are things that become available maybe the team wasn't aware of, or there is some cross-functional needs that need to be addressed. So you'll want to leave room for those areas. Use the training plan template as a guide to document the training needs that have been collected. So basically what you're doing is taking the information that was collected in the needs assessment document and transferring that information into a training plan template. And that's a basic list of all the topics that or areas or objectives that need to be reached as part of the implementation. Okay. Creating the training plan or create the training plan. So transfer all the relevant information as mentioned from the needs assessment document to the training plan template. Save the training plan as one worksheet or a merged workbook. I recommend keeping the training plan separate until the review process is complete to decrease the amount of confusion for those involved in the review process. So if you have a couple different business units that want training or role-specific training for their particular area, I would keep those that list or that training plan for that particular group separate from your overall program implementation. And then once you get to the implementation planning stage, I would merge all that and you would have your different tabs and then you can have a consolidated list of training that needs to be done across, I guess, for your entire organization or for that particular project. Okay, our next step would be to get the training plan reviewed and approved. So you would send the training plan to each key stakeholder, so those that you worked with to develop the training plan and the needs, you collected the information from for the needs assessment. Be sure to answer any questions and address any concerns that were, brought up during your meetings. Make sure that you are clear, concise, and that everything is being addressed. And then share the final plan with leadership. So you would send it to each stakeholder again. Be sure to answer any questions that they had, or if there's any open items, you want to make sure that you address those. If there are any updates to the document, be sure to notify others involved in the review process to ensure the approval is for the most accurate copy of the plan. And then lastly, share the final plan with leadership. Typically, leadership will entrust final decisions on plans to subject matter experts because, again, they are not the SMEs. They will depend on those business lines to make that decision. However, you do not want to exclude them from the opportunity to review and approve and also get that information early on if they want to be part of that review and approval step. But you definitely want to give them the opportunity if it presents itself. And you want to make sure that nothing is missed. I think that's the ultimate goal. Okay, so let's move on to the next lesson.